ready to explore a lost city that's, well, like something out of Indiana Jones' Angkor, deep in the Cambodian jungle.
Not just any lost city, though we're talking a huge metropolis, almost 1 million people at its peak.
Yeah, which puts it right up there with some of the biggest cities in the world before, modern times.
And here's the kicker. This was thriving between the 9th and 15th centuries.
When most of Europe was, well, let's say, a bit behind.
Exactly. And we're not just talking about size either.
Right. Angkor had advanced infrastructure, complex water systems.
Think indoor plumbing centuries before it caught on in a lot of Europe.
Pretty impressive. So how did this civilization get so advanced?
Well, we got to start with the Khmer Empire. They rose to power in Southeast Asia around the 9th century.
Okay, so where do they fit into the picture?
One of their key figures is King Jayavarman II. He declared himself God King in 802 AD.
Whoa, a god king. So not just a ruler, but also like a divine figure.
Exactly, and that kind of kicked off the whole Angkorian period.
I see. So that idea of divine leadership, did it shape their society and beliefs?
Oh, absolutely. It was central to the Khmer Empire.
So how did that play out in practice?
Well, the king wasn't just a political leader, but a sacred one, a link between the human and the divine.
And that influenced how they built their cities, their temples.
Absolutely, even how they structured their society.
Which brings us to those temples, architectural marvels. We can't ignore Angkor Wat.
You said it. Angkor Wat's the largest religious monument in the world. Mind-blowing.
Every time I see pictures of it, it's just, wow, the sheer grandeur.
King Suryavarman II built it in the 12th century, dedicated to Vishnu, the Hindu god.
It just screams advanced civilization, the engineering, the artistry, the scale of it all.
It really is a testament to their skill. And it wasn't just a standalone monument either.
Part of something bigger.
A huge network of temples, canals, reservoirs, all meticulously planned and interconnected.
So they weren't just building impressive structures, they were creating a whole urban landscape.
Yeah, a complex one too. Makes you wonder what it was like to live there in its prime.
Luckily, we have a glimpse into that daily life, thanks to a Chinese diplomat, Zhu Daguan.
He visited in 1296 AD and left a detailed account of his travels. Talk about a time capsule.
So he witnessed what it was like back then.
He described everything: royal processions, religious ceremonies, even everyday stuff.
Like what?
Bathing, clothes, food, bustling markets, festivals, even cockfighting and gambling.
Sounds like a pretty vibrant society, so his account paints a full picture then.
Oh, it's invaluable for understanding their culture and social structure.
For example?
He talks about their social hierarchy, the king at the top, and then priests, officials, commoners.
Makes sense. And what about their religious practices?
He describes that too, a blend of Hinduism and Buddhism.
So a mix of influences, but their religious landscape wasn't always static, right?
You're right. King Jayavarman II, a powerful ruler, embraced Mahayana Buddhism.
And he left his mark on Angkor too, didn't he?
He sure did. Built Angkor Thom and that iconic Bayon temple.
Ah, yes, the Bayon, with those enigmatic smiling faces.
There are various interpretations, but some think those faces represent Jayavarman VII himself as a bodhisattva.
So a being dedicated to enlightenment and compassion, that's quite a shift.
Right. His reign really changed Angkor's religious landscape, and the Bayon reflects that with its unique style.
It's interesting how each king left their architectural stamp. Jayavarman VII wasn't just building, but enacting religious reforms too.
Absolutely. Makes you wonder how these changes affected life in Angkor.
Right. It's a fascinating question, but one we'll save for next time.
As impressive as Angkor was, it eventually went into decline.
That's where things get really interesting. How does a civilization that seems so advanced just disappear?
That's the million-dollar question, and one we'll tackle in part 2 of our deep dive into Angkor.
Yeah, it's a puzzle that's kept historians busy for centuries.
Yeah.
How did this thriving city, Angkor, just fade away?
Right, like where did everyone go? What happened?
There are a few theories, each with its own wrinkles. So what are the main contenders for Angkor's downfall? Spill the beans.
Well, the popular theory for a long time was a good old-fashioned invasion.
Someone came in and conquered them.
Yeah, we know the Ayutthaya Kingdom from what's now Thailand attacked Angkor in 1431.
So a rival kingdom taking over, classic power struggle, makes sense.
But the evidence isn't so clear-cut. Angkor was already showing signs of decline before that.
So maybe not a single knockout punch? Then what else could have weakened them?
Remember those impressive water systems we talked about?
The ones that were super advanced for their time.
Turns out they were vulnerable to changes in weather patterns, and Angkor had some rough periods, both droughts and heavy monsoons.
So the very thing that helped them thrive could have also made them fragile.
Exactly. Imagine a long drought hitting a city that depended so heavily on its canals and reservoirs.
Yeah, that would be devastating. And then the floods on top of that.
Agriculture, trade, even their spiritual life, everything would have been disrupted.
Wow, it's like a double-edged sword. What a twist.
Now, there's another theory. Some scholars think the religious changes under Jayavarman VII might have played a role.
Oh, right. He was the one who embraced Mahayana Buddhism.
Yeah, and then things shifted back to Hinduism. All that back and forth could have led to social unrest or disrupted resources going to temple building.
Interesting. Did everyone just go along with these changes, or was there pushback?
That's the thing. We only have so much to go on. We can analyze the archaeology and accounts like Zhu Dagwan's, but there are still gaps in our knowledge.
Makes sense. So we have environmental factors, possible religious tensions, anything else?
Don't forget the sheer size of the Khmer Empire. They controlled a vast territory, and that takes a lot to manage.
So they bit off more than they could chew, spread themselves too thin.
It's possible. Think about it, supplying a city like Angkor, maintaining those complex water systems, defending your borders, all while keeping things running smoothly.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure. Could have led to internal conflicts or weakened their leadership.
Right, and then you have external pressures on top of that. It all adds up.
So it sounds like Angkor's decline wasn't a sudden collapse, but more of a slow fade, with several things pushing them down.
That's the picture we're getting, a complex interplay of environmental, social, political, and economic forces all shaping their fate.
It's a reminder that even the most impressive civilizations aren't invincible. So Angkor fades, its temples get lost in the jungle. What happens next?
That's where the story takes a turn. For centuries, Angkor was hidden, lost to the world.
Like a secret waiting to be rediscovered.
Exactly. Then in the 19th century, European explorers stumbled upon these incredible ruins, all overgrown and forgotten.
Wow, imagine that, seeing those magnificent structures emerge from the jungle.
It caught everyone's attention. Suddenly, this lost city, with its advanced tech and stunning architecture, became a symbol of a forgotten past.
It must challenge the way people thought about history.
It did. It made them rethink their assumptions about what non-European cultures could achieve.
Right. It's a reminder that history is often told from a certain point of view, and that there are so many stories out there still.
Absolutely. So Angkor is rediscovered. What happens then?
Does it just become a tourist attraction, or is there more to it?
Well, figuring out Angkor's history is an ongoing process. There's debate about how to preserve those delicate structures, manage tourism, and make sure the local communities benefit.
Sounds like a balancing act. Respecting the past while handling the present.
You got it. And it brings up some ethical questions about how we interact with these sites. Should preservation come first, or accessibility? How do we make sure tourism doesn't damage these fragile structures? It's complicated.
Makes you think, history isn't just about the past. It's also about the choices we make now that will shape the future of these amazing places.
Couldn't agree more. So we've looked at the rise and fall of Angkor, its rediscovery, and the efforts to preserve it. What does it all mean? Why should we care about a lost city so far away?
Good question. What's the takeaway for our listeners?
I think Angkor reminds us that progress isn't always a straight line. Civilizations rise and fall in complex ways, sometimes unexpectedly.
And their story can teach us something, right?
Definitely. One big lesson for me is the importance of balance. Angkor thrived because of its ingenuity, but it also declined because of its vulnerability and maybe because it overreached.
So even the most advanced societies aren't immune to nature or their own choices.
Exactly. And it makes you think about the challenges we face today: climate change, resource depletion, inequality. Can we learn from Angkor and build a better future?
Angkor's story is both a warning and an inspiration. It shows what's possible, but also the importance of balance and thinking ahead. So as we wrap up our deep dive, what's the one thing you want our listeners to remember?
I'd say the key takeaway is that Angkor's story isn't just about the past. It's still unfolding as we learn more and try to preserve it for future generations.
And on that note, we'll leave you with a final thought. Angkor may be lost, but his legacy isn't. Its story still has power, and it's up to us to learn from it, appreciate it, and protect it. We've explored a lot about Angkor, from its incredible rise to its mysterious fall and then its rediscovery, a story full of grandeur, innovation, and, well, some head-scratching moments.
Truly a civilization that makes you rethink what was possible in the pre-industrial world. Their achievements in infrastructure, architecture, urban planning, all centuries ahead of much of Europe.
Yeah, it really shifts your perspective. We tend to have this Europe-centric view of history, but Angkor shows that innovation wasn't confined to just one part of the globe.
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder, what other stories are out there waiting to be found? How many other civilizations might have accomplished amazing things that we've just lost track of?
It's humbling, for sure. So as we wrap up our look at Angkor, I'm curious, of all those theories about its decline, which one sticks with you the most?
That's a tough one. It's probably a mix of factors, but the idea that their advanced water systems were vulnerable to climate change, that really hits home. We see similar issues today, with society struggling with extreme weather and limited resources.
It highlights how connected we are to the environment, no matter how advanced we think we are.
Exactly. Angkor's story is a stark reminder that even the most brilliant civilizations aren't invincible. Their fate was tied to the environment, political stability, and maybe even their own ambitions.
It's a lesson from the past, both in what they achieved and where things went wrong. So for anyone listening who's now obsessed with Angkor, where should they go to learn more?
Well, nothing beats seeing Angkor firsthand. A trip to Cambodia to witness those temples rising from the jungle is unforgettable. But if travel isn't an option right now, there are some great resources out there. Start with documentaries and books that dive deep into Angkor's history and architecture.
And those firsthand accounts from Zhu Dagwan, they're a must-read.
For sure. His descriptions of the markets, the ceremonies, even the everyday sounds and sights, it all brings the past to life.
It's like time traveling, so on that note, we'll leave you with this. Angkor might be a lost city, but its legacy lives on. Its story continues to inspire, challenge, and remind us that the past isn't really gone. It's up to us to learn from it, appreciate its beauty, and ensure it's preserved for future generations.